You know, deep in the heart of India's forests and mountains, a quiet revolution was promised, a law that was supposed to give power back to the people who've lived there for generations. So today, we're going to dig into the PESA Act. It's a story of self-rule, of rights, and, well, it's a story about the really difficult journey from a powerful idea to an actual lived reality. Let's get into it.
But first, let's start with a really fundamental question. Who gets to decide what happens to a forest, a mountain, or a river? Should it be a government official hundreds of miles away, a big corporation? Or should it be the community that has called that place home for centuries? This exact question is what's at the very core of the law we're talking about today.
You see, for decades, this kind of one-size-fits-all approach to governing just wasn't working for India's tribal communities. Their unique cultures, their deep connection to the land, their entire way of life, it was all at risk. So back in 1995, the Boria Committee recognized this and recommended something pretty radical, a new framework for tribal self-governance. It became obvious that a special law was needed, one that didn't just govern, but actually empowered. And that's the story of how the PESA Act was born.
So what exactly is PESA? Well, the full name is the Panchayats Extension to Scheduled Areas Act of 1996. And the idea behind it is nothing short of revolutionary. It takes India's system of local government, the Panchayat system, and tailors it specifically for tribal areas. The goal is to make sure that their traditional laws, their customs, and their ways of life are not just respected, but are actually legally protected.
And this isn't some small niche law we're talking about. The PESA Act applies to what are called Fifth Schedule areas. These are regions that the Constitution itself identifies as having large tribal populations that need special kinds of governance. And it stretches across 10 states, from Andhra Pradesh all the way to Gujarat. So its reach is vast, and it impacts the lives of millions of people.
PESA is designed to build self-governance from the ground up, and it's not just symbolic. The law actually mandates that at least half the seats in local councils have to be reserved for members of scheduled tribes. But here's the really crucial part. Every single chairperson at all levels of local government must be a tribal person. This whole structure is meant to keep leadership firmly in the hands of the community.
But the real heart of PESA, the absolute core of it, is the Gram Sabha. Now, this isn't your typical elected council. Nope, it's the entire village assembly, made up of every adult member of the community. It's about as close to direct democracy as you can get. So, the big question is, what powers does this assembly actually have? Let's take a look.
On paper, the authority of the Gram Sabha is supposed to be massive. They have the power to regulate things like the sale of intoxicants. They have ownership of minor forest produce, which is a huge source of income for so many. And maybe most importantly, they have the power to protect their land from being taken away. From managing local markets to stopping predatory money lending, the Gram Sabha is designed to be the absolute center of all decision-making. This is what self-rule is supposed to look like.
But, and this is a big but, here's where the story gets really complicated. For almost 30 years now, there's been this huge gap between the powerful promise of PESA and how it's actually been implemented. The law itself is strong, but the reality on the ground? Well, that often tells a very, very different story. Let's dig into why that is.
You know, so much of the problem with PESA comes down to one single, incredibly important word: consultation. The law says that Gram Sabhas must be consulted before their land can be acquired. But what does that really mean? For the authorities, it often just means, hey, we asked for your opinion, now we'll do what we want. But for the communities, it means consent. It means their no actually means no. This one little ambiguity has been the source of so many conflicts.
And believe me, this isn't just some abstract legal debate. It has very real, sometimes devastating consequences. Just look at the Nyamgiri Hills in Odisha. A massive mining project got the green light because the government claimed the local Dongria Kond tribe had been consulted. But the tribe was completely against it. It took a long, hard fight that went all the way to the Supreme Court to finally establish their right to say no.
And beyond that crucial loophole, there are a bunch of other obstacles that have consistently watered down the PESA Act and stopped it from really delivering on its promise of tribal self-governance.
Just look at this timeline. It's pretty staggering. And it points to a huge problem: administrative inertia. The main PESA law was passed by the central government way back in 1996. But for it to actually work, each state has to frame its own specific rules. Take Jharkhand. It took them almost 30 years, to finally notify their PESA rules in 2024. For 3 decades,
That law just sat there, in a vacuum, completely unable to protect the people it was designed for.
And the list of challenges just keeps growing. You've got state laws on things like mining and forests that flat out contradict PESA, which creates all these legal messes. Then Gram Sabhas are given these powers, but not the money to actually use them, so they have no real financial independence. You also have resistance from bureaucrats who just don't want to give up control. And finally, especially in areas rich with resources, protecting tribal rights gets unfairly labeled as being anti-development.
So, okay, with all of these deep-rooted challenges, what does the path forward even look like? How can the original promise of PESA finally become a reality for India's tribal communities?
Well, the good news is the path forward is actually pretty clear. First, state laws on mining and forests have to be brought in line with PESA. They can't contradict it. This legal harmony is the foundation. Second, that consultation loophole has to be closed for good. It needs to be legally defined as prior informed consent. No more ambiguity. Third, Gram Sabhas need real power, and that means direct control over their own money, not waiting for funds to trickle down from somewhere else. And finally, we just have to reframe the entire conversation about development, shifting to a model that's led by the community and focuses on long-term sustainability.
So the ultimate journey for PESA is pretty straightforward. It needs to evolve from being just a statutory promise, a noble idea written down in a law book in 1996, into a living, breathing framework that actually empowers real self-governance on the ground, every single day.
And that really brings us to the final question, doesn't it? The path forward seems clear enough, but the political and administrative will to actually walk that path, well, that's still the biggest challenge. So will PESA finally be implemented in its true spirit, or will it just remain a powerful promise always just out of reach for the very communities it was meant to empower? The answer is going to define the future of tribal autonomy in India.